Do you think that 1991 Sylvester Stallone movie Oscar was trying to plant that seed in Academy members' minds? I guess naming it Academy Award was a little too on the nose. I don't know. These are the kinds of things I think about.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yaniz Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On this episode, we're going to talk about the 2018 Academy Award nominations. It's always like Christmas morning for cinephiles when the Oscars are announced early, which over here is about a little after, like 8:15, 8:30 almost is when it was announced recently here. But I know over there on the West Coast, it's like the butt crack of dawn, essentially. So what I want to do here is basically an audio version of what I did a couple years ago on the Crooked Table YouTube channel. You can see my reactions to the, 2016 Oscar nominations there. I don't really think I did anything like that last year. I want to try and keep this a regular thing because it is so much fun for me, and because I do really look forward to the Academy Awards and the horse race of it all. So I'm going to run through each of the, not all of the 24 categories. I'm going to skip the ones for the shorts and for documentaries, just because like most of you, I've hardly seen any of them. And so it's just easier to kind of cut those out and focus on the 20 of the 24 categories that highlight, major films that most of which I've seen at this point, and some of which I'm still catching up on. So I do plan on doing a 2018 Best Picture nominees ranked list, but I'll probably do that a little bit closer to when the Oscar telecast happens. So we're just going to go in the order that the nominations were announced earlier this week by Tiffany Haddish and Andy Serkis. So we're going to start with production design. So here we have Beauty and the Beast, Blade Runner 2049, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, and The Shape of Water. Now I could see this going a bunch of different ways. I think Dunkirk is probably a little bit appealing to the Academy because it is a wartime film and they are all about that kind of thing. Blade Runner 2049, I don't see getting this particular category, especially since, it's not one of the Best Picture nominees or anything like that. I really see this one probably going to The Shape of Water, just because it's not only trying to recreate the 1960s aesthetic, but also sort of touching into sort of gothic horror films and, creature features, and it has a lot of different environments that are very detailed and specific. So I could see this going Shape of Water. That's my prediction. Of course, I don't have any inside skinny onto what's going to win, but that's where when I cast my ballot, that's probably where I'm going to lean. So cinematography, we have Blade Runner 2049, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Mudbound, and The Shape of Water. Now, I think this is a no-brainer. It needs to go to Roger Deakins for Blade Runner 2049. Everybody has been saying this since that film came out, and since that film is probably the most visually appealing movie that came out last year. The shots in there are amazing. There were multiple times watching it on the big screen where I was just like, dumbfounded at the incredible images that he was bringing us, where I just wanted to kind of hit print on the theater screen and hang it in a frame on my wall. And Roger Deakins is one of those cinematographers that's been nominated, I think, like a dozen times or so, and he still hasn't won one, and I think that this is the perfect time to give it to him, especially since Blade Runner 2049 is probably not going to get a whole lot else. So, so far, these predictions are also things that I want to see nominated or see win, but I will specify as we go along if I read something and I think something else is going to win than what I want to win. So for cinematography, I'm definitely hoping for Blade Runner 2049. Going into costume design, we have Beauty and the Beast, Darkest Hour, Phantom Thread, The Shape of Water, and Victoria and Abdul. Costume design is a tricky one. I always feel like I have an idea where it's going to go, and then it usually surprises me, and it's just like somebody who is basically in an era-specific suits the whole movie or something like that. It's tempting to go Phantom Thread just because the story itself deals with the fashion industry. But honestly, I also want to say Beauty and the Beast because of the recreations of the, Belle's yellow dress and the Beast's blue suit and all that. But I don't know, something telling me Darkest Hour. Winston Churchill's assortment of hats and the way that everybody is dressed in that film, and it really lends it an authenticity. I really see that one kind of walking away with it. Personally, I have no real stake in this. Costume design is not something I'm particularly super passionate about. So I would be fine with Darkest Hour, but I really, of these 5 movies, I prefer Shape of Water. So I'm going to be rooting for that probably as much as possible, at least in this category. Going into sound editing, so we have Baby Driver, Blade Runner 2049, Dunkirk, The Shape of Water, and Star Wars The Last Jedi. Of course, I want Last Jedi to get as much as possible. However, I don't really see it getting this one. I think this is probably going to go to Dunkirk. I would love to see Baby Driver get it, but I feel like Dunkirk is the kind of movie between the land, the sea, and the air, and the way that all that is combined in that film. I could either see that getting sound editing or sound mixing. So let's go into sound mixing. We have most of the same. We have actually the exact same 5 nominees. So I would like to see the split. I would like to see Baby Driver get something here, and I don't think it's going to get both. So if one of these went to Baby Driver and one of them went to The Last Jedi, that would make me happy. But I sort of feel like Dunkirk might take possibly both of these, just because it is that Academy friendly kind of film. So let's see, going into original score. So we have Dunkirk, Phantom Thread, The Shape of Water, Star Wars The Last Jedi, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I kind of can see this going to Phantom Thread. I've heard a lot of positive things about this one, about the score there. I haven't heard it myself yet, nor have I seen the film at this point. But I can see that walking away with that one, especially probably going to be its only win. I love the music from Last Jedi, and I love the music from Dunkirk. I actually like all these other 4 scores. I have heard all of them. I don't think Hans Zimmer is going to get it for Dunkirk. I could see this going as part of The Shape of Water's possible sort of sweep. I know it's nominated for 13, more than any other film this year. So part of me wants to say Shape of Water for Alexander Desplat, and that's actually what I want to win. But I could see Phantom Thread sneaking in there, or even 3 Billboards, just because 3 Billboards going into this race right now is technically probably the front runner for Best Picture. So Best Picture has a tendency to sometimes scoop up a lot of the ancillary, more technical awards. So I could see 3 Billboards slipping through that one as a dark horse. But my personal pick is Shape of Water, although Phantom Thread might pose probably its biggest threat. Visual effects. We have Blade Runner 2049, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Kong, Skull Island, Star Wars The Last Jedi, and War for the Planet of the Apes. Visual effects, I've noticed, tends to go to something that where there's either a particularly strong sequence or there's a particularly strong element of the film that is executed well on screen. So for this one, I don't think it's going to go to Guardians or Kong Skull Island or Last Jedi. It really feels to me like it's down to Blade Runner 2049 and War for the Planet of the Apes. I would personally, even though I think Blade Runner 2049 is a slightly superior film to War for the Planet of the Apes, I think War for the Planet of the Apes really needs to win this one, because Andy Serkis didn't get nominated at all for Best Actor, which he should have gotten that if there wasn't the stigma with motion capture. And this particular version of the franchise has not won any of these awards so far. And I think as the fact that this is sort of a trilogy capper for Caesar's Story, and the future of the franchise is sort of in flux right now, I think this would be a great way to recognize the contributions that the visual effects team, as well as Andy Serkis, have made in bringing that character to life. So I'm going to say I want and I predict that War for the Planet of the Apes is going to win this one, because it really deserves it. What they pulled off motion capture-wise with this character and how they've created such a fully realized character, it's really impressive, and it deserves to be rewarded. Film editing, Baby Driver, Dunkirk, I, Tonya, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I think I would personally like to see either Baby Driver or I, Tonya get it, because what they pull off with editing is really to me sort of innovative. Baby Driver, as you know if you've seen the film, times the action and the movements of its characters and that kind of thing to the music playing, and that's hard to pull off. That's really critical editing back and forth on the part of Edgar Wright and his team. I, Tonya similarly is breaking the fourth wall every 5 seconds and having characters comment on what's happening on screen, and jumping time periods like crazy. So I would like to see one of those films win that, just because I think what they pull off with editing is really impressive and contributes a lot to what the ultimate result of the film is. However, I can't see something like Dunkirk coming in here, because it does combine the three different narrative threads taking place over 1 week, 1 day, and 1 hour, and compresses them so that they all sort of flow seamlessly. Even though, to me, I was not as wowed by that film as a lot of people were, the editing is definitely a strong point that it has going for it. Makeup and hairstyling: Darkest Hour, Victoria and Abdul, and Wonder. I would like to see Darkest Hour win of these three. I think it probably will, because it has the most support of these three movies. I think Victoria and Abdul is only up for maybe 2, and Wonder has this sole nomination. And the fact that they took Gary Oldman and they turned him so literally into Winston Churchill seamlessly, where if you went into this film and you didn't know that was Gary Oldman, you'd be like, who's this guy? He's great playing Winston Churchill. He looks so much like him. I think that is probably a no-brainer to win, so it's what I predict and what I want to win. Going into supporting actress, starting to get to the big categories, y'all. We have Mary J. Blige for Mudbound, Allison Janney for I, Tonya, Leslie Manville for Phantom Thread, Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird, and Octavia Spencer for The Shape of Water. So for a while now, it's really been down to Allison Janney and Laurie Metcalf. I think the fact that Janney she got the SAG Award, she got the Golden Globe. It's pretty much, at this point, Allison Janney is a shoo-in to get this one, I think. I know that Lady Bird has a lot of love, and Laurie Metcalf's probably a close runner-up. But Allison Janney is just one of those actresses that has been in so many films. Even if she shows up in a couple scenes, she brings her A game every single time. And she's never really headlining a film, but she's always such a tremendous asset. She's really in a lot of ways the female J.K. Simmons, but in that way, like when she pops up, you're like, oh, it's Allison Janney, and she brings such commitment to every moment she's on screen in any movie. And I, Tonya really gives her such a rich part to really sink her teeth into, who a lot of ways is the engine of the film from Tanya's perspective. As her mom, she plays her mom and really kind of pushes Tanya's life forward, propels her story forward and her career. And I think in a way sort of is a key element to what makes that film work so well. So I think Allison Janney's obviously going to get this one, to me. I'd be surprised if anybody is going to be an upset here, although I would say probably Laurie Metcalf is the closest. I will also point out that Octavia Spencer's nomination here for The Shape of Water, I love that film, and I think Octavia Spencer is a great actress, but it does feel like at this point we're just nominating people for showing up in a film. We'll get to Meryl Streep later on here, and I'm sure she's great in The Post, which I also haven't seen. But I really feel like this was a good opportunity for the Academy to recognize some comedic performances and throw in Tiffany Haddish for Girls Trip. I thought she was such a strong element of that film, and this has been her breakthrough year, and it would have been nice to have seen her get nominated. And I feel like Octavia Spencer sort of kind of snuck in there and took her spot. But that's just my personal take. It doesn't really matter ultimately, because Allison Janney is going to win this one. So going into supporting actor, we have Willem Dafoe for The Florida Project, Woody Harrelson for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Richard Jenkins for The Shape of Water, Christopher Plummer for All the Money in the World, and Sam Rockwell for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. And it's a really shitty time to be Kevin Spacey right about now for a number of reasons, but the fact that Christopher Plummer came in, shot this part from 9 days, according to reports, and basically got an Oscar nomination out of it. I haven't seen that film just yet, but I have seen the rest of these, and I think that Sam Rockwell is scooping up every award that he can. By all accounts, he's a good guy, and he's a great actor, like Allison Janney, who shows up in films and brings them to such a high level. I love Sam Rockwell in pretty much everything he's in. I understand that there's a lot of people have issues, and they find his character, have issues with. They don't have issues, but me that too. But they have issues with his character in this film, and they think it's problematic as far as the racist components of the movie are concerned. And I understand that, and I see that, and I think the film sort of recognizes that that's the case, and you know, reckons with that a little bit by the end. And it's not saying that he's a great guy or that he's even redeemed, but that he's just trying to redeem himself is the way I see that story towards the end. But I think that I'm perfectly happy with Sam Rockwell winning. That being said, Woody Harrelson, Richard Jenkins, and Willem Dafoe all gave really strong work in their respective performances. Of those three, I probably would like to see Richard Jenkins win the most, just because he is, and again, an Allison Janney, another character actor. So this is really a good year for character actors to sneak in there and get a lot of nominations. Willem Dafoe is another perfect example of that. These are not A-list stars who come in and with their face on a poster. These are people that come, often billed like fourth, fifth, sixth, and bring their A game by really filling out a film and making the narrative really sing. And there's several in this category, and I'm really happy with the fact that Sam Rockwell's probably going to win, just because I have been such a huge fan of his, and it would be nice to see him recognized for the great work that he did in Three Billboards. Foreign language film is the next category. We have A Fantastic Woman from Chile, The Insult from Lebanon, Loveless from Russia, On Body and Soul from Hungary, and The Square from Sweden. Of these, I haven't seen them all. I think that probably Loveless might sneak in there, just because I've heard a lot about that, and I can see that walking away with it. But then again, it's going to face some stiff competition from both The Square and A Fantastic Woman. It's hard to say the foreign language films, just because what tends to be talked about and what actually wins a statuette are not usually, but oftentimes very different things. So I'll be curious to see which of these walks away with it. At this point, my prediction is probably going to be Loveless, but again, this is always a category where the Academy tends to throw a curveball at us. Going into original song, we have Mighty River from Mudbound, Mystery of Love from Call Me By Your Name, Remember Me from Coco, Stand Up for Something from Marshall, and This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. If this doesn't go to Coco, I'm going to be pissed. I really love that movie. I really love that song, and I think that song encapsulates that film, its message, its heartbeat, and so much of what it's trying to get across is in that film, or in that song rather, and I would love to see that win here. However, Pasek and Paul won last year for City of Stars, so I could see This Is Me coming in there with a surprise win. This is a category the Academy has sort of let me down recently in the last few years. Last year, as much as I love La La Land, I was really hoping that How Far I'll Go would have won instead of City of Stars, which is to me not really one of the best songs in La La Land, which is really more reliant on its score than its original songwriting, in my opinion. But that's, I digress. So I'm going to say Remember Me, but, This Is Me. Some song with me in the title is probably going to win. But This Is Me could come in there and steal this one away from Coco. So we'll see what happens. Moving into animated feature. Best animated feature. We have The Boss Baby, The Breadwinner, Coco, Ferdinand, and Loving Vincent. Now, having not seen most of these, I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that Coco's going to win just because it is so beloved. However, I have a big beef with this category because I don't know what it is that the Academy has against Lego movies, but the Lego Batman is, by all intents and purposes, one of the better superhero movies this year, one of the better animated movies this year. And the fact that we have 5 nominees and they still couldn't slip it in there and they gave it to The Boss Baby and Ferdinand really makes no sense to me. I would have even preferred to see Captain Underpants nominated here. But again, like some of the other categories, it doesn't really matter because this is almost certainly going to go to Coco, which is not only one of the best animated film of the year, but also one of Pixar's best since Inside Out, if not since Toy Story 3. Both of which won Best Animated Feature. So I think there's very little chance that Coco doesn't walk away with this, deservedly so. Moving into Adapted Screenplay, we have Call Me By Your Name, The Disaster Artist, Logan, Molly's Game, and Mudbound. I know that the Academy loves to get their Sorkin on, so hence the nomination for Molly's Game, but I really don't think that they're going to give it to him this time. I mean, if I recall correctly, Steve Jobs wasn't even nominated. I don't even think he got nominated for that script. And Molly's Game has not really very much support this year. No Jessica Chastain or anything. And of these, the only one that's nominated in Best Picture is Call Me by Your Name. So it feels to me like probably that's going to win here. Even though for me personally, I would love to see Logan get it because I did love that film. I thought it was one of the best films of last year. And this is also such a tremendous achievement for a superhero film to even get nominated for adapted screenplay. It's different. It's one thing for them to be nominated for visual effects or sound editing or that kind of thing, but this is them this Academy acknowledging this movie based on a comic book had one of the best screenplays of the year. And I think that is in and of itself a tremendous statement. Of course, there's been already a million op-ed pieces about why Logan's nomination for adapted screenplay is so important for the genre. So I would love to see Logan go all the way and walk away with that, even though it's probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be Call Me by Your Name. I think The Disaster Artist was also another one that was probably looking like a stronger contender early on. But at this point, it's probably not going to happen. So I'd say it's probably Call Me by Your Name here easily. But my personal pick is Logan. So moving into original screenplay, we have The Big Sick, Get Out, Lady Bird, The Shape of Water, and Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I'm tempted to say Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri will take this one just because it is such a front runner for Best Picture, that or Shape of Water. Personally, I would prefer either Big Sick or Get Out to get nominated, but I really feel like Lady Bird might take this one because I don't think Greta Gerwig, and we'll get to director in a second, I don't really think Greta Gerwig is going to get an Oscar otherwise, and this film has so much support, and I think this is, so much of it is from her heart and her soul, based in part on her life, so I think that would be a really special way to honor her achievement with this film is to hand her the original screenplay Oscar for this one. So I would like to spread the love a little bit. And since Shape of Water and Three Billboards are probably vying against each other for the biggest prizes, I'd like to see one of the other three get this. If not Lady Bird, then certainly Get Out or The Big Sick. Going into leading actor, we have Timothée Chalamet for Call Me by Your Name, Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread, Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out, Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour, and Denzel Washington for Roman J. Israel Esquire. This one really feels like, I love Denzel Washington, but really? That film does not have a lot of support going into it, and nor did it really make any money at the box office. So this just feels like that was going to be James Franco's slot, but after the whole scandal broke, that fell by the wayside, and Denzel sort of slipped in there to take that fifth spot. I don't think he's going to get it, and I definitely don't think Kaluuya is going to get it, even though I think it's awesome to see him nominated for a horror film. This is a big year for, and again, I've already said about Logan and the op-ed pieces for that nomination, but the fact that Get Out, essentially a horror film, is nominated for so many awards, including for its performances, or for its lead performance, rather, I think is really impressive and says a lot about the Academy's willingness to sort of to start to embrace other genres that they may have cast aside in the past. I don't know how much of that has to do with the new diversity initiative for the Academy members, and that they're bringing in younger people and people of different races and ethnicities. But I think that's awesome to see Daniel Kaluuya nominated, even if I don't think he's going to win. Daniel Day-Lewis, again, I think the nomination was the recognition he's going to get for this one, even though he would to be able to tie Katharine Hepburn's 4 Oscar win if he gets this. This is really down to Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour, though, and deservedly so. That's an actor that probably one of the most common ones when people say, can you believe such and such doesn't have an Oscar? So I'm glad we're going to probably get a chance to finally correct that and get Gary Oldman his Oscar. I'd say his biggest threat at this point is probably Timothée Chalamet, just because I have heard such strong reviews about him, his performance in that film, and this film does have a ton of support behind it. So Chalamet could sneak in there and steal it from Gary Oldman. We've seen things like that happen in the past where we thought Mickey Rourke was going to get it and Sean Penn gets it or something. So I I think Gary Oldman's probably got this sewn up though. So that's who I would love to, who I want to see win, and that's who I think is going to win. Going into leading actress, Sally Hawkins, The Shape of Water. Frances McDormand, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Margot Robbie, I, Tonya. Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird, and Meryl Streep for The Post. No more Meryl Streep. She's got a nomination. She slips in there like every year, every other year. I think we're good on Meryl Streep. I think Margot Robbie is tremendous in I, Tonya, and the same with Sally Hawkins, but I don't think either one of them is going to win. I would personally love to see Sally Hawkins get it for The Shape of Water, just because her performance is so effective and she doesn't utter a word, and she really transforms herself into that movie. I've seen into that role rather. I've seen other movies where she is like super chatty and upbeat, and that's sort of her character. And to see her play this sort of lost, sort of downtrodden in a way, but then also joyful later on, the transformation that her character undergoes because of her kinship with the amphibian man, I think is really profound in a lot of ways. You can read my review of The Shape of Water on crookedtable.com for more of my thoughts on that film. I think for this one, though, it's really, as far as who's going to win, I think it's probably between Frances McDormand and Saoirse Ronan. And it's the classic case of the ingenue versus the veteran. Frances McDormand won one 22 years ago, or 21 years ago, I guess, for Fargo. And Saoirse Ronan, it would fall right in line with Emma Stone, Brie Larson, and people like that, Jennifer Lawrence winning Best Actress, in that she's younger and established an impressive run of films that I think really warrants this kind of recognition. And I think Saoirse Ronan is only going to do greater projects in the years to come. So I could see her getting this from McDormand, who's probably the front runner right now. So this is an interesting category though, because I do feel like it could go almost any way, even though I don't really see Meryl Streep getting it. So right now I'm going to say McDormand is probably my prediction, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Saoirse Ronan wins this one. In fact, when I do my actual ballot, I might actually, for my own, my family ballot, I'm not voting in the actual Academy Awards. That would be amazing. I wish. I might predict Saoirse Ronan's going to win this one. So we'll see what's going to go on there. There's 5 incredible performances, though. Like as I said, I haven't seen The Post, but I've heard great things. But the other 4 are really amazing. Going into directing, we have Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk, Jordan Peele for Get Out, Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird, Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread, Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water. I think that this one is, first of all, kudos to the Academy for listening to people with the films that they love this year and nominating a black man, a woman, and a Latino man in this category, and having actually the white guys be the minority. I think that's very progressive of them, and I'm finally getting some recognition for all these the breadth of work that's being done out there by directors of all colors and genders and all that stuff. I read a stat after the nominations came out that Greta Gerwig's nomination is the 5th female director to be nominated for this award, and I knew that beforehand, but I didn't really do the math. So this is the 90th Oscars. So I did a little research, and the Best Director category has sometimes, vacillated between like 3 to 6 nominations, etc. But if you say, let's say generally there was around 5, that means there's been over 400 nominees over the past 90 years. And this is the 5th woman, 5 out of 400. That's fucking obscene. And the fact that she got this nomination is, I think, a good sign and something to be celebrated. I think her work on the film is great. So I don't expect her to win, unfortunately. I think that she's more likely to get a statue for Best Original Screenplay. In this one, it depends. I could see it going one of 2 ways. I could see Christopher Nolan getting this for Dunkirk, because that film is really all about its technical achievement. And Christopher Nolan is the type of director that every time he puts a movie out, people are like, he's going to get nominated for this one. And then he hasn't. This is his first directing nomination. So I could see him getting it for this one. especially since the other film I'm going to mention that might win is a little bit weirder and little more out there for academies to run with. But I could also see Guillermo del Toro winning this for The Shape of Water. There's such support for that movie. He's been picking up a lot of the statues thus far in the awards season. I would personally love to see, as much as I love Christopher Nolan, I would actually love to see Guillermo del Toro get this, just because Christopher Nolan will turn around and do another movie that'll probably get nominated. Guillermo del Toro might never get this shot again. He makes movies that are very offbeat and very outside of what the Academy tends to go for, and I worry that if he doesn't get it for this one, that he probably won't make a film that'll be this embraced by the Academy again. So I'm hoping Guillermo del Toro will win this, although at this point I'm still probably going to say that Christopher Nolan will probably win director. So that's my personal take. It's interesting not to see Spielberg in here. I think that's another. I guess Paul Thomas Anderson snuck in there as sort of the critics' darling slot that would have normally gone to someone like Spielberg. But especially since Phantom Thread it's got a lot of nominations, but it's not really a movie that has been quite as talked about as I think people were expecting it to. So so that's my thoughts on director. I'm really rooting for Guillermo del Toro. So finally, we have Best Picture, and we have 9 nominees this year. I don't know why they have the sliding scale of 10, but they still don't. They don't 10. It seems like we never get 10. In any case, these are the Best Picture nominees: Call Me by Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So not having seen all of these, I've seen most of them at this point, and I will see all of them in the next couple weeks. I think, as I said, I think 3 Billboards is probably the front runner just because it has been scooping up so many other prizes. Personally, of the ones that I've seen, I prefer The Shape of Water. I think it's the best one of this lot. I think it's the film that there's a lot of films here that speak to where we are as a country right now, and that have a lot to say about social commentary and that kind of thing. But I feel like The Shape of Water handles that in a more allegorical way. That film is really about finding connection in unlikely places, and about embracing compassion and letting go of sort of the stubborn old paradigm, and shifting into something that's more inclusive, that's more diverse, that's more considerate of others. And I think that it's a visionary work by a visionary director, and easily one of the best films of last year. Even though I love that Get Out is here, I love that Lady Bird is here, I love that. I love 3 Billboards. I thought 3 Billboards was a great movie. However, I feel like I understand the problems that some people have with it, and it didn't 100% click with me as The Shape of Water, in the same way The Shape of Water did. I feel like, as I said this in my other videos and stuff, Best Picture, it should be a film that's emblematic of the times, and I think The Shape of Water comments on that. And while not as directly a way as something like The Post or Darkest Hour and things like that, I feel like it handles it in a very delicate way, and it creates a message that everyone can embrace in equal measure. That's not really, it's not really political. It's just humanistic more than anything else. And I think that's part of what I love about the film. And going back to the last episode, it's ambitious, it's rewatchable. I have a personal bias for it, and it's in so many ways, it executes what it's trying to do, and it has thematic resonance like coming out of its ass. So I would love to see The Shape of Water win this one. I could see 3 Billboards getting it because it is a little bit of a safer choice in some ways than The Shape of Water, which has a fish monster romancing with a human woman. So I'm going to say prediction, probably still 3 Billboards, but I'm really, really hoping for The Shape of Water. So hopefully I can put that out in the universe, and the Academy will hear me somehow and make that happen. So those are my thoughts on the Academy Award nominations. It's interesting, there were a lot of snubs this year. I know a lot of people talking about Wonder Woman didn't get nominated, and this thing didn't get nominated, and I would have loved to have seen Wonder Woman sneak into like the technical categories. I don't think it's personally worthy of a Best Picture nomination or anything like that, or acting. But it would have been nice to see that get, I don't know, fucking costume design or something. The fact that it didn't win, or it wasn't nominated, and something like Suicide Squad is an Oscar winner of the four DCEU movies to date. The fact that the only one that has an Oscar is the worst one is a little bit ridiculous. But we can only bitch about what wasn't nominated for so long before we have to just face facts and be like, well, all right, it didn't win, and that doesn't mean that your favorite movie, if it didn't get nominated, that's any less of a great movie. It's just the Academy is as political as anything in Hollywood, so we work with what we get. So I hope that this has been interesting to hear my thoughts of the Oscar nominees. I'm definitely going to be watching when they come on in March, and it should be an interesting show. I know Jimmy Kimmel's done a great job hosting in the past, and I'm very excited to see what goes down with the Oscars this year on Sunday, March 4th. So let me know what you wanted to see nominated, and what your thoughts are on these nominations. Like, what do you think is going to win? You can let me know that on Twitter, and let's have a conversation about the Oscars and how it's all going to go down. So that's all I have for now. You can rate and review the Crooked Table podcast on iTunes. We're also on Spotify and Stitcher, if you'd be so kind. You can find me, Robert Yaniz Jr., on Twitter at Crooked Table. Of course, you can find more podcast reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. I'm not exactly 100% sure what the next episode is going to be about. I'm tossing around a couple different ideas at the moment, but I've been really trying to steer the focus of this podcast away from just film reviews, and to let that be more of a on the written side of things on the website, and have this be a little just more in-depth discussions, or kind of less predictable topics. There's a million other movie podcasts doing the same kinds of things about, like, all right, let's all talk about Star Wars, let's all talk about this thing. And so I'm trying to take a little bit of a different stance with this show going forward. So let me know if you like that, or if you want me to just go back to doing movie reviews. Just hit me up on Twitter at Crooked Table. Until next time, I've been Rob. We'll catch you around the table next week. Roll credits.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
The art of a little KED.